The Capital Markets Authority was established by an Act of Parliament and is a regulatory body responsible for regulating and facilitating the development of orderly, fair and efficient capital markets in Kenya. The authority's vision is to become a proactive regulator of a competitive and robust capital market. The mission of the Capital Markets Authority is to promote the development of Kenya's capital markets to be the investment destination of choice through facilitative regulation and innovation. Alongside several regulatory roles such as investor protection, ensuring proper conduct of all licensed persons and market institutions, investor education and public awareness among others, the Capital Markets Authority is charged with the responsibility of regulating the issuance of capital markets products such as bonds and shares, through which resources are mobilized and allocated to finance long-term productive investments.
The Capital Markets Authority is a statutory agency. We have what is known as a dual mandate, both for regulating and supervising the operations of the market, as well as developing and deepening the growth of the market.
One of Capital Markets Authority's primary responsibilities is executing the gatekeeper role by ensuring that only persons and entities of good standing become intermediaries in the capital markets. As such, Capital Markets Authority is responsible for licensing of all market intermediaries. Market intermediaries include the Nairobi Securities Exchange, the Central Depository and Settlement Corporation, stockbrokers, investment banks, investment advisors, fund managers, authorized depositories, collective investment schemes, real estate investment trust managers and trustees, venture capital firms, credit rating agencies, and authorized security dealers.
The important thing to look at when reviewing these applications is that the company has the necessary personnel to carry out that responsibility. They have to have the right financial capacity to undertake that function. They must also have good corporate governance structures. They must have a board and management that carries out the oversight of the company effectively, because many times they will be advising the general public. They will also be receiving funds from the public, and the public therefore needs to be well protected.
The main objectives behind the regulation and supervision of market players are investor protection, the reduction of systemic risk, and ensuring that markets are fair, efficient, and transparent. Capital Markets Authority has in place several measures and standards to ensure that investors are protected.
We do risk profiling from our side. We also encourage intermediaries to monitor their risks, and all the information we collect in surveillance on a daily basis, we use that information to do profiling for the intermediaries.
Capital Markets Authority also has a robust and comprehensive system of inspection, surveillance and compliance to ensure that market intermediaries and listed companies conduct themselves in a way that protects the interests of their clients and helps to protect the integrity of the markets. The authority also requires market intermediaries to maintain the minimum required capital for their businesses. The second category of market players besides intermediaries is issuers of securities. These securities include shares, units and bonds issued by listed companies, collective investment scheme, real estate investment trusts, and the national and county governments respectively. Before any entity can issue securities, it has to submit its application to the Capital Markets Authority for approval. The role of the Capital Markets Authority is to ensure that the company meets all the disclosure requirements for a public offer.
At the Nairobi Securities Exchange, we've got companies in the agricultural sector or segment, we've got companies in the manufacturing segment, we've got companies in the telecommunication segment, the financial segment, commercial services, construction, investment services, and then we also have what we call the growth and enterprise market segment.
a company has to have a nominated advisor in order to list on GEMS. So usually the first port of call is to the nominated advisor to appoint a nominated advisor, and then the nominated advisor coordinates and manages and advises on the whole listing from start to finish.
There are two primary methods of listing on the Nairobi Securities Exchange. The first is an initial public offer, commonly referred to as an IPO, whereby the shares are offered for sale to the public and listed on the exchange immediately thereafter when the offer closes. The second is a listing by introduction, where a company's shares begin trading on the market without sale of shares to the public.
You can move from being a shop in your village to being a chain within your county to being a chain across a country. Kenya is part of the East African community. You can now become a chain across Eastern Africa. You know, you're moving from 40 million Kenyans to 143 million East Africans now start being your potential clients. When you're operating on that level, now you start looking at Africa. But to grow like that, the only way you can do that is through affordable long-term financing. And that is really the solution that the capital markets look to provide.
In addition to this, any company seeking to issue a security of any kind to the public, including corporate bonds, has to seek the approval of the Capital Markets Authority.
Shelter Afrique is the leading Pan-African financial institution that fosters affordable housing across the African continent. We primarily fund and finance real estate projects. We then approach partners like other DFIs, both international and African, in obtaining additional sources of funding. But even that is most of the time not sufficient, which then means that it leaves us with another alternative, which is to go out to capital markets and seek sources of funds on those markets. We're very active in at least two capital markets, primarily in Kenya, but also in the West African area in Ivory Coast, where we have issued bonds over several periods. Our experience confirms that. If we look at our rates, if we were to borrow directly from commercial banks, our rates would be higher than what we're getting from the bonds.
Another crucial role of the Capital Markets Authority is deepening the market through the introduction of new products and services. The authority believes that an educated investor is a protected investor. As such, the Capital Markets Authority invests resources and time in disseminating investor education information at both national and county levels. Some initiatives include structured forums, county outreach programs, open days, radio and television awareness campaigns, university challenges, and national trivia campaigns.
When it comes to investor education, our primary responsibility or mandate is to ensure that we educate, we inform, we disseminate information to the Kenyan public, both investors and issuers.
To ensure the safety of investors' funds, the Capital Markets Authority has a fully staffed investigations and enforcement department to protect investors by investigating violations of the capital markets regulatory framework and executing enforcement processes.
Investigations can start from customer complaints. Investors can walk into the CMA offices and lodge their complaint. They can do that through other means like emails. The complaints can range from the conduct of the market intermediary, for example, brokers. An investor may claim that they paid money to a broker and they did not get the shares they wanted to buy, for example. So we need to find out what happened to the funds, and if shares were purchased, where are they? So we go out to find out what happened, and so that we may seek restitution for the client.
The authority has a capital markets fraud investigation unit specialized in economic and cybercrime based in the Capital Markets Authority offices.
We have a team of 10 to 12 officers at any one time who are dedicated to investigating, and assisting in the prosecution of any fraud or criminal activities within the capital markets arena.
My colleagues and I look forward to building on what has already been achieved and making our own contribution towards the accelerated delivery of the goal of making Kenya the heart of capital markets financing in Africa, and the ultimate Vision 2030 objective of Nairobi emerging as a highly regarded, competitive, international financial center.
The Capital Markets Authority's vision is built on the recognition that Kenya needs to diversify its opportunities in wealth creation. The vision is anchored in the Vision 2030 economic blueprint, which recognizes the important role played by the financial sector. The Capital Markets Authority, promoting capital markets integrity.